You're listening to the Football Coaching Podcast. I haven't gotten to say that in like 3 years. I am hosting. Daniel is here, but he is in his car. And I have a game to go to. So we're going to skip a lot of the pre-show banter with Daniel, especially since we just did it last night. So we're caught up. And we are going to be talking today to two of the coaches who have been with JDFB for a long time, running our system, specifically 425 for the most part, and now are helping us with our game film analysis. So first, and both have been on the podcast, so you may recognize them already. Coach Bill Weiss. Coach, want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Bill Weiss. I coached for 30 years at Chisago Lakes High School in Lindstrom, Minnesota, and I retired after last year, just enjoying some, additional family time and few other responsibilities, but still staying pretty heavily involved in the game, doing a number of other things, including some work with Joe Daniel football.
And Con Chase.
Yeah, I'm similar as Bill, but I'm not retired. I'm taking a couple years off like Joe did.
Sabbatical, yes.
Sabbatical. I'm taking a sabbatical after 18 years as a high school football coach in Massachusetts, 4 years as a head coach. And I was a client of Joe's, and now I need to get my football fixed. So being a part of the game film and analysis has really done that for me. So love it.
And Daniel from his steering wheel.
And I'm Daniel from the steering wheel. Just still me. 4th year in, and I love the game film analysis.
So Daniel is in the car, and I'm trying to get to the car. And Con has a motion sensor light.
Oh, it's gonna go off 100 times.
Awesome. This is great.
Ability at Milton Academy.
This is like the old school podcast. We're just trying to figure out. I recorded one time, way back in the archives. If anyone wants to go listen to it, and it was decent. But Tim Murphy out in California, double wing guy, was moving. I think his family was moving, and so he was like, I got time to talk to you. Nobody knew who I was. I just started, and he said, I got time to talk to you while I'm in the car driving. I might have been driving a moving truck. I don't even know. And but I think that he was on the call with his windows down the entire time. So it is some phenomenal audio from a guy that I could not wait. We got some good stuff, and I think eventually he got to where he was going, and we were able to talk. But so we've not our first in the car show. Real quick, want to pay the bills. JDFB Foundations. Go to joedanielfootball.com/foundations. Daniel, I did make a script for this. I just didn't share it with anybody.
That's good.
Yeah, that's how this works. JDFB Foundations basically have taken in some of the videos I used to use for promotion, but they're really in depth. Most of them are around 15-20 minute deep dive videos, and there's about 15 of them. There's also some web clinics in there. Really great information for you to get into. All you got to do to get it, excuse me, go to joedanielfootball.com/found.
Daniel, that's why we need you. You fill this up. You got the bigger lungs now.
Athleticspeedmovement.com is the other, host of the Football Coaching Podcast. The other people we pay the bills to. You can jump over to athleticspeedmovement.com and get Del Basquet's 45 years of experience in the speed and quick movement coaching industry. He's been doing it. He was NFL's first speed coach. He's been doing it for high school coaches, college coaches, full programs. I brought him in. One I'm talked to, 11 years in a row or something. He's had Del Basket come out. So we've taken all that he charges rightfully a pretty penny to come out and teach. And now you can pick it up online and coach it to your kids yourself after watching some videos on the internet. It's athleticspeedmovement.com.
I lost my voice. We're gonna make it.
Hopefully you can call the plays tonight, Coach. I
don't call plays anymore.
Oh,
no, I'm a consultant.
I need that role. That's what I want to be.
So, coaches, I want to know. One of the things I think is really important is getting outside eyes let me get through this. You can't see the picture when you're in the frame. You need somebody else to look at your film. So, Con, we'll start with you. What is the importance of having someone else, or what has been the importance of having someone else take a look at your film?
I think for me, especially early on when I was getting used to the system, was really hammering home the terms that we use in our system and the coaching points, and hearing it from, being a client, hearing it from the guy who created the system really was helpful. And it was a way for me to teach my staff as well. So, in the beginning, in the old school game film analysis, it was the typed out notes. I don't know how you did that. That was a lot of work. But we would read the notes as the staff, and then
I
the
type
video
fast.
part. Yeah, you type fast. It was pretty good. And then now with the video, it's even better. And I think it's a good coaching tool. Getting a third party view on what you're doing, and some of it is confirmation. Confirmation that some of the things you're doing is starting to work. And once we get comfortable with your films, I know from watching some, and Joe, you've been doing it for a long time. That's how we got to know each other. You watched 1,000 of my 100 of my films, and then you got to know what we're doing and what we were good at, what we were bad at, and you can really fine tune those areas of improvement.
I think that the confirmation is a big one. Just hearing someone say, like, you're going in the right direction, because that can be hard, especially when you're building a program or you're rebuilding. It can be hard to see it. Bill, same question. What do you think the importance of, or why do you need someone looking at your game film from the outside?
I guess I would concur with what you guys said, but just having that confirmation that what you're doing and what you're teaching is right. Because, you can't control your opponent. And sometimes you have a really good opponent, and it doesn't matter what you have, but at least if you're lined up properly and your guys are moving to the right place, all right, I'm coaching up the right things. And sometimes, you're not. And it's nice to somebody say, oh no, you're supposed to do it this way, or that guy should move here, or that guy's alignment should be out here, or it would help if he would move him out. So just some of the little, things, especially when they're specific to how my team lined up, was a tremendous help, because, we'd see some of the same style offenses maybe 2 weeks later. And if we go in and we could fix a mistake that we had that was just with a simple alignment or a simple teaching tool that I picked up, from you or from someone else, but you were the one evaluating our film, that was invaluable.
Yeah, I'll go with that. Like, I think as the coaches, we get wrapped up in worrying about Billy Burke. Good point up. We're so worried about the opponent all the time, what they do. And when a third party really is looking what you're doing, then making those small improvements each week goes a long way by the end of the year. Definitely agree with that.
Probably one of the biggest mistakes that coaches will make with game film analysis, less now than in 2019, 2020, we would have coaches who wouldn't send the film when it was bad. I'm not going to send it. We got blown out. The same rules apply. Again, it takes no talent to squeeze a down block. It takes no talent to align correctly. And if you just say, we got blown out, and you don't send that film in, or you don't have somebody else look at it, or you don't look at it and study it yourself, you don't self-scout it, you lose out every time. That's why I like to film practice. Every time that you touch the field is a chance to make those corrections and see those things. And it does help a lot for me. And we'll talk more, you guys have seen too. It helps a lot for me because I am completely detached from the situation. I did not scout that team. I don't know that team's record. I don't know anything about them. So that's a huge help. Daniel, what about you? What, importance of having someone look at your outside film or outside look?
So obviously in my 4 years, I've installed a Joe Daniel style defense in 3 different places, and then helped convert another team to one. And, one of the hardest things is always having someone looking over your shoulder, nitpicking. And so it's nice when that third person isn't the guy who you're trying to prove yourself to all the time, or maybe someone who's really caught up in some other scheme. And so they're always nitpicking your scheme because this isn't the way they've always done things. but it's still your job to get your system not only installed, but make it work right. And I think a second big piece there is you don't know what you don't know. So when it's early on in your career and you're trying to maybe be a new DC or, maybe you're just a DB's coach, but you get to send your film in to let Joe and the guys, tear it up. You can kind of prove like what I'm doing. The way that I need to do stuff is, I guess, that confirmation piece. Look, I sent it off to these guys. They all said that the way that I'm doing it is right, or vice versa, the way that you're wanting it done. Here's the disadvantages that I didn't know, which back to that, you don't know what you don't know. If I'm doing something wrong because I'm doing it the way you're telling me, but I don't even know the disadvantages. Now these other guys, that third eye or third person can check it out and kind of inform all of us.
The idea that you have, you have somebody watching who understands the system and understands you guys have all put your own touch on your systems and put your own, flavor into it and done it your own way. But one of the things that I see, and by the way, I had this and still have this. Bill Mountjoy has always looked at our film, and as an offensive coordinator, he's always looked at my film. And Bill is brutal. Coach Mountjoy is absolutely brutal. I am super nice compared to him in these game film analysis, but I understand. The more I've done it now, I understand. You're running my baby. And if you're doing it wrong, I'm going to tell you. And if you do it wrong again the next week, I'm starting to get mad. And that's my job. But one of the things that I find is sometimes I will get a film and I will be like, what are they doing? Why did you say, is this trolling me that you're doing, something that's like the safeties will be 1 by 1 off the edge or something, or the free safety is 27 yards deep and the corners are 19 yards deep. All of these things. And I'll say something and in the video and I'll get a response. Usually we love to get a response and just hear this didn't go out into the abyss. And I think you guys do too. Love to hear back, just hey, coach, that helped. Or sometimes I'll have a coach say, hey, I know what you're saying, but our head coach won't let us do that. To which I inform them, I'm going to say it every time because it's wrong. And I can't just let it go. But I understand that you can't change it. But I will get the response that oh, thank you so much, coach. We'll fix the alignment. We'll move our linebackers from 2 yards to 5 yards. In my head, if you watch the 4-2-5 defense system, that's foundational stuff. But what I'm realizing is there's 12 hours of video in the 4-2-5 system alone. In the pistol power offense system, there's 25 hours of video. Then there's however many hundreds of hours of Chalk Talk Q&As, other stuff, pieces in other systems. There's so much stuff. You are very likely going to miss some of it. And so that's what I find is coaches have just missed some of it. And sometimes they've missed, not on purpose, not intentionally, but they've missed some of the most important pieces. Bill, in your experience, what are some of the things that you have learned or that you've found out that you missed? And especially in your experience now doing game film analysis with us, that maybe you see other coaches missing? What are some of the big things there?
I guess a couple common things is sometimes some of the exotic formations, you think you never see them, and it's nice to hear back when somebody says, oh yeah, we've seen that before. And so I've learned a lot from that. Even simple things as trips. Trips can be drawn up on the board and you can align accordingly, but sometimes number 2 is real close to the formation. Sometimes he's way out wide to number 1, and that makes a difference on how you align your strong safety. And that's been something I've noticed looking at a lot of film of other teams. And I've noticed that over the years that we've had to talk to our guys about, hey, this trips is different from this trips. And it helps get when I get reinforcement, when you gave me, some of those tips about that. And I could see places all over the country. It's just very interesting for me to look at schools, across the country from coast to coast, but a lot of commonalities in terms of they all see trips. well, how are they handling it? And how is this trips different from that trips formation? And that's just one example of it. But I think it's very beneficial to get somebody, because sometimes, the base way you do it has to be tweaked a little bit, and having an outside eye, point that out is pretty valuable.
Yeah, I think alignments too. We've talked to Lynn Shackelford. It's been like a year ago now or more, but he said that 70% of the touchdowns against his team, his championship year, were bad alignment pre-snap. So 70% of the scores they allowed came from just not being in the right place. And so exactly what you're saying, Coach, those weird formations or standard ones that you got to do differently, you just have to line up to them differently sometimes. Having that eye in the sky that can tell you, like, look, that was a great way to do it, or here's 2 or 3 other ways we've seen it done. That's not a resource that's anywhere else in football coaching, I don't think, than just getting to send your actual game film in.
I'll tell you one that comes up all the time. I think even Bill, like, I remember, like, maybe even last year, a couple of years ago, and I think you had a free safety change in the middle of the season. And
Yes.
I remember the free safety was lining up over top of the ball. Bill's run this defense forever. Like, Bill's been coaching forever. And I see coaches who don't know, but I see coaches who just, like, we get into stuff and we're out there and we're coaching the game. And I'm like, dude, your free safety is lining up directly on the hash. It's like, that was just like a little thing that is an alignment thing that can hurt you. But from the standpoint of what's helpful, you mentioned trips. And Con, we're going to get your feedback too. There are, like I said a minute ago, hundreds of hours of stuff, but I still will be watching a game film and say to someone in the game film analysis, hey, this is something that you could do to this formation. And I realize as I'm saying it, I don't know if I've ever said that anywhere on record. And if I have no idea if I could ever find it again, because some oddball formation doesn't fit into this massive, overall system where it's impossible to have every single little change and adjustment written down. Some of it just stays up here and then you see it and you're like, you could do this. You wish that you could have seen it during the game, I guess. But Con, what about you?
Yeah, I think, my last couple of years coaching, I was coaching at places where you're kind of rebuilding the program. And I had great coaches with me, but there wasn't many of us. The last year I was coaching, I was offensive, defensive coordinator, and head coach. That's a lot. So to have someone look at my film and help me with the details throughout the week and finding, that happened to me. My free safety, same thing. He's over the ball, but he's on the short side of the field on the hash, and now we give up 4 verticals for no reason. The stuff like that was very, very helpful for me. And if you marry that with the system, with the Chalk Talks weekly, you bring the weird formations to Joe on the Chalk Talk, and then you get all these coaches to talk about it. So, and I think bringing in the game film analysis, being able to hammer those little details each week, the more you do it and the more you listen to it, the more comfortable you are. And now I find myself as I do it, I'm like, I know Joe is going to tell you the same thing right here. Your force player is 3x3 right now in their running toss. This is a problem. But if you do that with the Chalk Talks and everything, I think it makes you a better football coach.
The funny thing about the force is that's another one that we tell our safeties to align 5x5 if there's no number 2 receiver. It's off a tight end or whatever, as you guys know. And I will have coaches who I'm like, he's got to get wider and deeper, and I'll go through the whole. Hey, he's too tight. He's going to give up the flats. And then the next play will be a pass in the flats. And I'm like, now he's too far up. He's going to create a vertical seam. This play is because of the vertical seam. And then I'll explain the alignment. And coaches who heard 5x5, but it's just so far from what they've always done that they think it must be an exaggeration or something. And so they get him 3x3. And I'm like, okay, this is why you just gave up a toss play. This is why you just gave up a play in the flats. This is why you just gave up. He could have folded in here if he wasn't up on the line of scrimmage. He could have, vertical seam, horizontal seam, and explaining that just the amount of time I spend explaining that alignment and what happened because of that alignment. I think that I know that there are coaches out there who maybe they're gold clients and don't have access to game film analysis yet. You can upgrade to platinum to get it, or maybe you were in the system 2 years ago and you are still running it, but you're just not a member anymore, which we've done a lot of updates, so you might want to be. And I know there are a lot of coaches out there who think they are doing it right. And without getting those outside eyes, you are going further and further away from the path, if you will, which bothers me, because then you go, we ran Joe Daniel, 4-4-2-5 defense and it didn't work. It's like, you never asked Joe Daniel how to fix it, though. We're here, or Con or Bill.
Yeah, go back to that point. I just had the way you're talking just made me think of a story with my defensive coordinator, one of my best buddies, and I think that the force alignment was our biggest change, because that was, it's ingrained in people to play tighter. This is what they do. And we were playing a game, and he was lining up 5-by-1 off the slot the whole game, but then we were giving up some inside runs, so he got frustrated and he moved them in, and they scored a 60-yard touchdown on a bubble. And he turned around to me and said, "I'm sorry." And then I was like, and since that point, like, we were full in on the system. And obviously Bill talks about the weird formation. Sometimes it can't be 5-by-1. Slots 20 yards to the sideline, whatever. But that was using the game film analysis with a buy-in moment. He's like, "Oh, Joe's going to get us. Joe's going to get us next film."
I do enjoy that when you'll get guys who are like, "I knew you were going to say that. I knew there was something wrong." We look from the offensive side, because we've been talking mostly from a defensive standpoint, but I'm the one who looks at all the offense stuff right now. Coach Weiss, Coach Chase will look at the defensive stuff. I look at all the offense right now, partly because we don't get a ton of offense, and partly because I just like doing it. But the funny thing about offense is I am such a weird detail nut on offensive line play that there's no way I can talk about it. Like I said, the pistol power offense is 25 hours. And if you send me end zone copy, I sit there and I'm like, he stepped 2 inches too far to the left with his left foot, and going over every little piece of the blocking or your pass protection or anything. I get frustrated sometimes because I'm like, that's not a play. That must, I just kind of assume that must be a misfire. But the detail that you get in that, I think it's pretty there. That's probably where the most drastic change comes from in the course of a season, is the offensive line play, because I'm so detail oriented with it. I would say also the defensive line. Found more and more things. It seems like the closer to the ball you get, the more on the action you are, there's more things to adjust. What would you guys say is you mentioned the safety alignment. What would you say are the biggest levers or the biggest things that can make changes during the course of a season? Well, Bill, will go with you there.
I think even, simple things, sometimes sliding, linebackers sliding their alignments a little bit, can be a lever. I see a lot of times, linebackers just naturally will creep up closer toward the line of scrimmage. And, and you're just seeing, hey, remind those guys they need to be, back at 5. So they got some ability to room and ability to move and to see things. And so those are usually the biggest ones. And I guess another thing that happened, I know it happened to my own guys, is defensive linemen all of a sudden just getting, they're supposed to be we call it a split alignment. So their inside foot is splitting the feet of the offensive lineman. And all of a sudden they'll be cheating out and they're in a foot alignment and they're just too wide. And then when there's a down block, they're not able to get hands on. And, those are some levers of just, reminding that, hey, that initial stance in alignment is everything. And sometimes, in the flow of the game, flow of the season, you lose sight of that. and having someone be able to look back and remind it, hey, get back to that. It matters.
I think what you notice watching the game film analysis, getting my own reviews from Joe in the past, is I know that coaches are doing the drills. They're doing guard read drills. They're watching the quarterback. They're doing umbrella drill. But in the stress of a game, at the end of a game, when they're tired, a critical moment, when their adrenaline is rising, that's when, we did guard read 2 weeks ago. No, you have to do guard read every day.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because if it's not ingrained in their natural tendencies, when that stress comes out, that's when the mistakes are going to happen. That's when they're going to creep up. That's when, all the mistakes, all those little things you work on every day, that's when I think that that stuff comes up.
Probably one of the things that I've said the most in game film analysis on the defensive side, and you're right, you can either tell that they're being coached to do it or they're not. One of the things that I've probably said the most in the opening weeks of this season is, usually for me at the last couple of minutes, I will take the last minute or so to say, here's the things I need, corner defensive line needs to focus on this, linebackers need to focus on this, safety, which leverage to pull. And I'll get to the defensive line, and I probably said this to almost every team, other than a couple. Your defensive line coach needs to go in this week and he needs to run key read drill, and he needs to do nothing but base block and down block, and he needs to do 2 down blocks for every base block. And he needs to do that for however long they have individual periods. And if he does anything else, you need to fire him. And that's the kind of thing that, quite honestly, I doubt anybody actually does that, honestly, even though they should, because I try to emphasize you can't play in our system without squeezing down blocks. And the defensive line coach is going to be over there with hoops and shoots and sleds and ropes and ladders. The kids are all tangled up and they, tripping over bags, and they can't squeeze a down block. And so that's the kind of thing that I look to do is, when there's something that is glaring, I'm going to be a little rude about it. Quite honestly, don't do anything else. Daniel, what about you? What are some big levers?
Yeah, y'all mentioned the alignment, and I think that's one of the key ones. Stances is something I've really started seeing. I am working with a local team here and helping a fellow coach kind of dip his toes into the DC world, and so I get to watch his film. And what I've seen, and I'm seeing it in my freshman kids too, so I kind of get the redundancy there. But stances, especially on the defensive line, and I guess the O line as well, but people are doing some really weird stuff, and it's almost like they're just letting kids dictate what their stance should be. I've seen a lot of D linemen want to go to 4-point stances all of a sudden, but it's not like a 3-point stance with another hand in the dirt because I don't want to Ricky Bobby and not know what to do with my hand right now. It's I'm going to lay out like a limousine cow, and now I need 2 false steps to get under my own hips so that I can attack this offensive lineman. And so I'm seeing stuff like that. Outside backers turning their butts all the way to the sideline, corners kind of doing the same, which, if you're running read 2 coverage, you expect a touch of that. You want to have an open stance, but not the old school cover 2 funnel, entire body turned perpendicular to the line of scrimmage. So I think stance is the next step. Even if you put the kids where they're supposed to be and they know exactly what they're supposed to do, and now all of a sudden they can't get off the ball and they can't be effective because they've got too many false steps. It's just as bad as being too far or too close, right? Like it takes you 2 steps to attack the O-lineman. You're not really doing your job. So I think that's a lever that sometimes can be muddied on terrible film, rainy days. If you're using anything that's not a high definition camera, I mean, at my, a lot of the schools I've been at, we're just using an iPad, and those cameras don't pick up much. So you can't see what all those linemen are doing. All you know is you're not getting the effect that you need. And that's probably one of them.
We used to play a team that, and this was when I was early on in my coaching. And so I kind of thought that this was like, oh, this kid's crazy. And this is awesome. They had this defensive lineman who would get down and he would be in the 4-point stance, and he would be doing mule kicks, and he was a wrestler, and he would just wreck shop. I mean, he was a quick wrestler kid on the defensive line. He would just wreck shop. but he'd be down there doing mule kicks, flipping around and screaming and doing whatever. He was crazy. And again, at the time I thought that was kind of cool, but now I'm like, yeah, he's pretty terribly coached, honestly. But he might have been one of those kids that you moved him down there from safety and scout team one day and he tore everything apart. And so they were smart enough to just not let the defensive line coach talk to him. Because usually as soon as the defensive line coach starts to try to make that kid a defensive lineman, it all goes to hell. But yeah, last year was the first year that I really started focusing on, and almost every team that I've worked with, hey, inside hand down. And guys, on the offensive line, I don't care because I got to block a guy to the right, I got to block a guy to the left. And there's some debate on that. But defensive line, if I'm in a shade, inside hand needs to be down because it's going to get there faster to strike. And if I don't, and I would show them if I don't use my inside hand down, inside foot back, I would show them on film, hey, when I strike him, my inside foot is up. I have no leverage. I get turned out like a door. If I strike him with my inside hand down, my second step, that foot is in the ground. I strike him and I have that power position. And showing those little things. Defensive line is a big one. I'll tell you one that I've probably gotten I've probably gotten on all of you guys about it, I'm sure. It's corner stance. And like nobody talks about corner stance. And I'm like, I've probably said it 1,000 times, chest down, hide your numbers. And like corner stance is one that the guys just put the corners out there. The team they're playing throws the ball 8 times a season. Just let him be. I'm like, all right, good. Nobody threw at him, but fix his stance before you find somebody that does. Let's talk about, so we've hit a lot of things here. I want to talk about, it doesn't just have to be game film analysis. But real quick, I'll go ahead and pay the bills right now. And then we'll talk game film analysis. JoeDanielFootball.com. You can go to JoeDanielFootball.com, get access for $1 to all of our coaching systems, 4 defensive systems, which are really just one, 4-2-5, 3-3, 3-4, and the 4-3, 4-3, 4-2-5, 3-3, 3-4. That's all the defenses. And then the pistol power offense system. They're all extremely in-depth. You're also going to get what's going to happen when you sign up is you're going to get a little survey, a little registration, kickoff registration. I send you back a personalized video telling you where, based on the information that you give me, the more information you give me, the better. I send you back a personalized video to tell you, hey, in the next 7 days, and usually it's about 3 days into your trial because it takes some time to do these. The next couple of days, these are the things that you need to do that you can do right now that are going to have the biggest impact on your team. You're going to get that immediately. I'm going to point out where to go so that you can have the biggest impact based on what you've shared with me. You're going to have access to all the videos. I'm going to get you practice plan templates. I'm going to get you install templates. Wherever you're at, we're going to get you what you need. But we have 2 levels, gold and platinum. I usually don't talk about platinum that much. It's kind of like once you get there, we talk about platinum more. But platinum is the upgrade level, and platinum coaches get access to game film analysis. And we've kind of just glazed over what game film analysis is, but you send your film in via Huddle or Quick Cuts or however you get it. I get, film that's just uploaded to Google Drive, and we get it however we can get it, and we watch it. And what we do, Con, Bill, myself, we don't let Daniel do it. He's not allowed to do this yet. He's got to run the same defense 2 years in a row before he can get to before he can get to do this. We use a screen recorder and we talk we watch your film for about 20 minutes and we talk and we telestrate and we say that, here's where you can, look at this. This is what we're seeing. This is the things that we can do. And you send it back to you, and that's only at the platinum level. We do it every week. Doesn't cost anything extra other than being on the platinum level. And I can tell you, and these 3 guys will probably tell you, it's the absolute best thing, most helpful thing that we do. And it's the thing that's made the biggest difference. I can tell you that, we've had teams that have gone really far in, the playoffs. We've had state championship teams. And, what we see in game film analysis, the teams that consistently send it every week are the teams that clean things up and prove all season long, truly make huge leaps during the season. So that's what game film analysis is a chance for outside eyes, people who don't know your players. Although when you watch 10 games, like 12 games, I can still tell you about kids that Bill coached like 4 years ago. Like I remember their numbers. I think your 2019 team, I can like name them. I can like line them up right now. Because that was one of the first teams I think that I had 12 films on, and your however many it was. But we don't know your players. We definitely don't know much about your opponents. So we haven't scouted. We're outside eyes, and so we're just looking at it from a purely analytical standpoint of these are the things that are not right. And you can send me back the reasons. There's always reasons. Well, coach, this kid was hurt, and I'm like, okay, but we got to. I understand, it happens, but you got to fix the backup. We had a team last year in Wisconsin when it was best season, one of the best seasons they had in program history. Went through 5 safeties. Every single time one of those safeties came out, he knew that I was about to tell him what was wrong with the safety. And then by the next game, the kid would be better. But that is what game film analysis is. It is the most valuable thing that we do at JDFB. Coaches, I mentioned Bill Mountjoy for me, for our offense. Are there other places that you've gone to get those outside eyes?
Yeah, it's something we did with a couple of guys. When I first started coaching, we were all on one coaching staff, and actually three or four of us all branched off to be head coaches on our own. So we had familiarity with each other, but we're all in different programs. And what we would do in the off season, because we're football crazy people, we would pick once a month in the off season, we'd get together and we'd watch one of our films from the previous season and critique the heck out of each other. Why were you calling this on? It could be offense, defense, and then we would take like our biggest rivals, the teams we needed to beat, and all 4 of us would help each other and diagnose what they're going to do and what we need to do to get better. And I like that, and that was really helpful for me.
Yeah, Bill.
Yeah, some outside eyes. I have a couple of coaches who used to be on my staff, and they branched out ever. One of them's at another school in the state as a head coach, and other one's an assistant at another place. And they'll still look at our film. Like going into the playoffs last year, we got to the point where we were in the state tournament and we had a opponent's entire season. And I didn't have time to look at all their film. And so I'm like, hey, can you look at these? Because he knew what our defense was and how it would match up. And so it was really helpful to, just to kind of farm that out. And then they could even give me some tips about our scheme and how it would work and things like that. So anytime I got a chance to use some outside eyes with, especially, people that, were familiar with our program, that was always very valuable. And, for that matter, sometimes I've just talked to people and said, hey, would you look at our stuff? Could you give us some tips? Just like what I'm doing right now with Joe Daniel football. Feedback is valuable, and it's, you can take it or leave it, but just getting, hearing back is better than hearing nothing.
You mentioned sending it to coaches that were on your staff, and I think that's like coaches that you've worked with in the past. Bill, you started coaching, 30 years ago. I started coaching 20 years ago, and it's changed. Tanya, 18 years. It's changed. And Bill, maybe it was more so, maybe not. It feels like 30 years ago, 25 years ago, even 20 years ago, we were all kind of worried about our film getting out there, worried about, like, football was way more before the internet, put everything out there. We were all worried about someone seeing our film. And you still occasionally will run into coaches who are like playing games with the huddle exchange. And it's like, listen, I'm just going to call the guy you played last week and tell him you're screwing around in the huddle film, and he's going to send it to me, and I'm going to get every game you've ever played, and I'm going to send you mine on Monday afternoon because you want to play games with it. But like, there's no reason to keep your film secret at this point, is there?
I think you can assume that everybody's going to see it, and yeah, it's out there. And I've gotten to the point, in my last years, that it's more about us and what we do. And, the opponent's just looking at what we're trying to do on offense, what our alignments are on defense. But, you don't have time to nitpick your opponents where they're making mistakes. And to me, if you can correct yourself, you're better. And I'm not worried as much, in the last several years, just knowing that everything from YouTube there, it's probably out there. And it's like, yeah, who cares? But can I get my team better? And that's what it became about for me. Can I get my team better? And I don't care who else sees it because they're probably looking at different things than I am.
And I think the longer I coach, the less I care about the opponent and the more I cared about my team. Exactly. Yeah.
I have done and you know, you have guys that are on your schedule that, you know, maybe you've coached against them for years, maybe you've, you know, hung out at a clinic or something like that. I've definitely had times where, especially if we've already played a team that was on our schedule, call that coach up and say, what did you think of us? Like, and especially, you know, where this comes in a lot is when we all have that common opponent. You know, you got the one coach that's a jerk, or the team that's been on top forever, and you just want to see somebody knock them off. And so you'll call each other and say, look, what did you see about us that we can fix or we can do? And that's a great source of outside eyes for you. Daniel, what about you? Where have you gotten some outside eyes in?
So I found it very, very hard. And to be honest, I don't have anybody besides sending it to you guys and letting you do your thing. And I think that's what makes this so valuable, is that our coaching circles are full of other coaches who are extremely busy game planning for their own Friday night. And I'm just not the type that's going to be like, hey, can you look at my film from last week, to just a coach that has stuff to do. Con, I love what you said you do in the off season. I think that's great. And then trying to add that into your system, whatever changes you can find, that's wonderful. But I think it really does highlight the value of having the game film analysis and being a JDFB insider and having the platinum program, because you don't have to worry about bugging your buddies. You can send it to Joe, let Con or Bill tear it down and send you back what you can fix. And you've not interrupted anybody else's normal schedule. I've got good coaching buddies as well from last staff, and Kenny Ridley, my mentor, and I'd love to send them film, but I know that they're busy. I have, since I've been helping my friend start kind of get better in his career, I've noticed there is a little more time to watch film than what I think. But assuming someone's going to take that time is a little bit different. So I think that just highlights the value of what you got going on.
The ability to send somebody the film, like guys are busy, people are busy. It's hard to always find somebody. Maybe if you got, I find one of the greatest play, and Bill can speak to this, one of the greatest resources you can possibly find is a retired football coach, because they just want to watch some football. They just want to have some input, whatever it is that they're no longer on the field. They just want somebody to come to them. And especially when you've got a lot of years in the game, those guys love to have somebody come to them and show some respect for what they've done, and say, so, the guys that are coaching now may not have time, but the guys that, are retired, most of them, if you have any relationship with them at all, would love to take a look and give you some feedback on it. Now,
yeah,
go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say another part of this game film analysis. I know your question's a little bit different here, but there is a shortage.
I'm trying to steer people away from it now. It's
there's a big shortage of coaches, and so another added value that I can see to the game film analysis is just, you can't be in every indie period if you're the DC. You can't coach every kid during team, although I try, and maybe to my own detriment. But and coaches sometimes just won't speak up for some reason in team. I've noticed that's a big trend at every school I've been to, is like, it's team and we're all afraid to slow the tempo down and coach a kid. So having that film, being able to send it in, it definitely allows you to see the things that are outside your frame during practice, during games, whatever it is. And it gives you a skilled coach. It's not just the rookie D-line coach and you put him there because he's new, or the corners coach who, I'm this guy right now and I have been my whole career, who can't get a kid to drop deep enough in cover three to just not get deep. Right, it seems like they always give it up right when you don't need it. But man, you're hiring another coach to put on your staff, but it's three guys. It's you three, right? And you all bring years and years of experience. So just added value there, I think, to the game film analysis.
I want to close out with one question for you guys, and maybe I'm looking to get this answer because I'm just perplexed, but I do understand it. And I know that you may have worked with guys that feel this way. Why would you not send it in, have you run in? Because we have way more platinum clients than we get game film. Way more. If they all sent their game film in, we would be screwed. That was when we would have to start hiring like 100 coaches in a day. But it is not uncommon for me to hear coaches say, my head coach doesn't want me to send it, or or have you gotten pushback from assistants who you go and you say, take a look at this, this is what they said about it, and you get pushback? Have you gotten pushback from assistants? Where have you seen resistance to something like this? And I'll throw one more in. There were times when I didn't want to send the film to Bill Mountjoy because I just couldn't deal with it emotionally because it was brutal.
Yeah, I think some of that is people might get embarrassed of a poor performance, especially, if you're starting with a new program and things aren't going well. But that's the perfect time to send it in. And then, if you're an assistant, you don't want to make your head coach mad. So I get that part of it. And getting the permission to send something in, especially if maybe it's a guy who's paranoid about his film getting out there. I don't know. You have to have those conversations. And I know this year we've gotten a couple guys who are like, Coach, we're focusing on the D-line in this film. And that is 100% fine. He may be the defensive line coach. So if you're the linebacker coach and this is what you're doing, send your film in and tell us you want us to watch the linebackers. We'll watch the linebackers. And we won't tell you all the other scheme stuff. Break it down to make it more useful for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I have one of our coaches who's been with us for a few years. He is coaching the offensive line. He's been running our defense for a few years, but he's coaching the offensive line. They're not running pistol power offense system, though. I told him at one point, like, you basically are. So because it ain't that different, it's power, counter, inside zone, outside zone. We pretty much run the gamut of plays outside of triple option. And all I look at for him, he's the offensive line coach. So I know I can't talk scheme, though I will. I do bring up like that play won't work. Don't be mad at your kids. But all I look at for him is his offensive line play. And that's, so it could be as personal as you want it to be. And I'll probably, honestly, one of the things that we, if anybody's wondering why we do this, I do this because I need the film. Because I will take your film. And if you've been on JDFB, you've seen Con's teams and you've seen Bill's teams. You've seen Bill's teams thousands of times. And I need that film so that I can show this is how it's done right. I don't use it. I never embarrass anybody's kids. I don't put the ones out there where it's a disaster, but I use the film. I'm perfectly fine, by the way, if you tell me, please don't use this film. I'll still do the game film analysis and I'll throw it out, but I've never had that, very rarely. But we do it so that we can get the film and so that we can share the film. But we'll do like that particular coach, I probably won't end up using any of that film because it's not our offense, right? And so that's that's one of the things about it. But still, we're happy to focus on that stuff.
I would just comment, I guess there's all kinds of reasons why people might be a little resistant to turn. Everyone's a little bit different on that. But what I really liked when I'm doing this is, and I've even encouraged coaches like, hey, if everything was fine the first quarter, and then all of a sudden it was a second half that things fell apart, tell me to watch that part. Or even just say, hey, start watching at this point. Because I don't know, there was one game I watched and the team said, we really struggled in the second half. We couldn't stop this, that, and it might've been a personnel thing where somebody got hurt, or I don't even know what it was, but I just started looking second half, looked at start to third quarter and went from there. And that's the thing I say it ahead of time is that, hey, if there's anything else you wanted me to look at, leave a comment, in the comment box, and I'll gladly, go back to that part of it because I'm really enjoying it. I suck at retirement because I thought, hey, I'm done coaching football. I'm gonna go to bed early every night. And there I am, it's 12 o'clock and I'm still hammering away on film, but it's fun. I am really getting a great opportunity to look at teams all over the country and what they're doing. And hopefully I can help them out a little bit.
Daniel, anything to add? Why we wouldn't send film in?
I just think it's a pride thing more than anything. It probably is coaches that are not the head coach. And I think as coaches, we all think or like to think we have all the answers, right? If whatever situation comes up, whatever it is, we have the answer. We have the way to fix it. And that's something I've seen having different head coaches is there's people out there that just won't reach out because you're a product online, right? And like, what does he know? Oh, I'm going to send it to Mr. Know-It-All, right? And we've talked about that personally. Like that's flack that employees of Joe Daniel football get just because it's a program that's sold online and it's football. And so I think that's got to be the majority of it. People are stuck in positions where pride is bigger in the office than ever actually getting that problem fixed. People will probably change defenses before they get that problem fixed and blame the scheme just because they don't want to send in film and get the little thing done.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a number of reasons, but like I said, we do use the film, but if you request not to use it, we'll watch the film and delete it. And that saves a little room on our Huddle account. Well, actually it saves room on our Quick Cuts account. Huddle doesn't give you enough space to keep film there. So if you guys want to save 500 gigabytes or whatever it is of film, get a Quick Cuts account. And that's about where we're at right now. We've got to start cleaning some things out there. But there's no, I think one of the important things here is there's no judgment on it. Every one of us has been a football coach. Every one of us has had the 11th kid off the bench out there on the field. And every one of us has had a guy who's out of position and doesn't know what to do. Every one of us has gotten out there on game day and found out we didn't coach this very well. Every one of us has been trounced by 40 and running clocked, and every one of us is running clocked to somebody else, I think. So we've all been in those situations. We all coach, we all understand when you're sending this film, it's not whether you send it to Game Film Analysis or you send it to someone else, none of it's personal. It's all even though, like I said, I get frustrated sometimes because I just want to run up there. Like sometimes I'm watching the film and I just want to run to the airport and fly to your field and go out there and take this over and fix this. But we can't do that. Bill, I'm sure you feel that way. Like you just want to jump, you see something and you haven't been out on the field and you just want to go out there and jump back into it immediately. That's our natural way of doing things. But coaches, anything else to add before we close things up here?
Final thing, I would just say that you reiterated this, but we're real guys. I think sometimes there's a perception of, I think there's some coaches that, boy, they built some type of a dynasty and that hats off to them. But that's I think for the most part, what you've just said, we've been on the top end and had championship years. We've also been on the bottom end where we've struggled just, to stop a team at times. And so we understand the struggles. And I really wish I had something like this early in my career, because I remember there were many nights that I just didn't have an answer. And I just think if I screamed a little bit louder, that would work. And being able to have a system and then be able to go back and get answers to it in the last, part of my coaching career was very helpful, to do that and to bounce ideas, off of others that are in a like situation. And like I said, one thing I learned, that, hey, it's, you go around the country, it's real, it's not all roses everywhere. And a lot of people we all have the same struggles. And that's what's cool about football. It's that commonality in it. And that's what I found in this group.
Yeah, I'll reiterate that. Like just watching film, you get one from California, Oklahoma. I think last year I watched one from Hawaii, which was really cool.
Yeah. I think we have 2 teams in Hawaii now.
Yeah, it's fantastic. But then, just like Bill says, that we're all been a part of the same growing pains. I started out just, as a young coach, learning my way up, and then being honest, like defensively, learning the Joe Daniel defense and the terms we use and the way we do it. I learned that through watching the videos, but really by doing the game film analysis. I think that's when my coaching took a different level, and that's how I got to know Joe anyway. So that was good. We get to know more people. I say if you use the service, the biggest thing doing it now more and more, the more comments you leave, the better, the easier it is for us to help you out. When it's lost 48-0 or won 26-0, that's great. But why? What's going on? What blitzes are you doing? More details, the more helpful we can be.
That I remember Bill used to run a 3-3, and at the time we didn't have the communication system the way that we do now. And I think I pulled up your film one time. You ran a 3-3 against some spread teams.
Good spread. That was our go-to against spread teams. Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't know that the first year, and so I pull up the film and I'm like, this guy has just abandoned his defense in like the fourth game of the season or something. And so now we have a communication system set up. So please use that to tell us like we're running the 3-3 this week, because that's what we do against spread teams. So and it really does. The more we know, sometimes you do get these long notes and it's like, ugh. But then you read it and you're like, now I know so much more. I know that I should start in the second quarter. I know that your free safety got hurt. I know that your guys weren't squeezing down blocks, and you know that your guys weren't following pullers. Sometimes I remember I did one this week, and it sounded in the notes like this was the worst football team that had ever been on the field. And then you go to watch it and it's like, all of these things are being coached. I know they didn't do them, but as much as you like, but all of these things are being coached. And so we can come in there and kind of talk you off a ledge too. And that's not a bad thing either. We've already talked about Joe Daniel Football. Go to join.joedanielfootball.com, get access for $1, all of our systems.